Welcome to today's special show to discuss 5th August, another black day in the history of Kashmir, as India has revoked the constitutional status of Indian illegal occupied Jammu and Kashmir by violating international laws.
Not just my husband, the other leadership as well, but he's being kept in a death cell and he's on a hunger strike on to death. And he was recently on 25th of May, he was given 2 life imprisonments, and he was given 10 years of rigorous imprisonment and monetary charges and all. But obviously, as his wife, because we're advocating for the rights of Kashmiri people, so any person who speaks up for Kashmiris, according to the Indian mindset right now, the current state is that they're terrorists.
My father figures nowhere. In the first supplementary charge sheet, again my father Shabisha figures nowhere. In second supplementary charge sheet, my father Shabisha has mentioned in two lines that he has given some money to victims and stone pelters. That too at the time when he was already imprisoned in Rajbagh jail. So there has been no proper trial, and this is a criminal silence.
The 2 stories from Mashal and Sahar about the family loved ones who have just been in jail for decades and decades. And I did particularly want to say hello to Mashal. I haven't seen her for 4 years. When I had one opportunity to go to Azad Kashmir, and she was one of the first people I met on my way there, and great hospitality, and I learned a lot.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's special show to discuss 5th August, another black day in the history of Kashmir, as India has revoked the constitutional status of Indian illegal occupied Jammu and Kashmir by violating international laws. 3 years ago, shortly after Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was re-elected to power, the Hindu nationalist government headed by Modi scrapped Indian administrated Kashmir of its special status, divided into 2 federal territories, and imposed an unprecedented security shutdown in the valley, during which thousands of Kashmiris were arrested and imprisoned. I would like to welcome today's guests to discuss this important topic, as some of them are actually directly impacted by this. So I'll first introduce all 3 guests, and then we talk to them individually. First of all, Michelle Malik, a wife of one of the very influential leaders in Indian administrated Kashmir, Mr. Yasin Malik, who has been fighting for the rights of Kashmiri people, who advocates a peaceful resolution to the decades-old conflict. We also have Sahar Shabisha, the daughter of Sayyid Shabisha, who spent actually 36 years of his life in prison for raising his voice for the people of Kashmir and for the right of their freedom that has been promised to them for years. And we also have our own Lee Rhiannon, former Australian politician who was a senator of New South Wales between 2011 to 2018 and was also elected at the 2010 federal election representing Australia Green. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
And Assalamu alaikum. So first of all, we start with you, Michelle. Please talk to us. What is the situation there? What do you think of the situation currently where you are?
It's kind of confusing because it's like literally you're like on a ticking time bomb. I don't know any news you can get about my husband, because he's on a fast on to death in Tihar jail, and we've been having sleepless nights for the past 5 days, and it's just because he doesn't even go on drips. But the latest information that we've gotten is that he was shifted to some jail hospital from the death cell, from barrack number 7, and he's arguing with them. He doesn't want the drip, so that's really fatal for his electrolytes because they imbalance the sodium, potassium, and all. And he's already on life-saving drugs, and he's not been taking them for the past 5 days and 5 nights. So it's just it's a very complicated situation because there's distance. We've not been able to speak to him for the past 3.5 years. We've not seen him, and my mother-in-law met him after 2.5 years for just through a classroom. She went to Tehar a few days back before his. She was there on the 19th of
Mhm.
July, and she spoke to him through the classroom, and she begged him that don't go on a hunger strike, just just keep the faith strong. And he said, no, I've left my case to God Almighty and to the prophets, and because I've tried my level best, and he's written
Mhm.
a will as well, and he's an icon of the peaceful resistance because he was the
Yes.
pioneer of the armed struggle. And the way, if you go through the will, I mean, it's like a piece of history which will live forever for the Kashmiri people and for any peaceful, activist or leader around the world, because
Yep.
the way he has sacrificed and the way he has followed the pacts that he had, the unwritten pacts with the international world, with the American government, the British government was involved, intellectuals from all over the world
Mhm.
who came to
Yep.
visit him in the jails in the early 90s to convince him. A lot
Yep.
of people from the Indian state, Indian intellectuals, scholars,
Mhm.
you follow the Gandhian path.
Yep.
So now he's following that path for over 34 years.
Yep.
And we are seeing that there's absolutely no result coming out of it,
Yep.
and he became a symbol for the youth to follow a path of non-violence against such a big occupation, convince them that the world will listen to us. He's still honoring that, and
Yep.
God forbid if anything can happen to him any moment, the way situation
Yep.
is. It's deteriorating at such a fast pace. If any news comes, I mean,
Yep.
I'm just it's obviously it's. I hope it never happens because
We hope.
I don't know what will happen to us, but
Yep.
the impact it will have on the public, on the masses,
Yep.
is it's a colossal damage
Yep.
to
Massively.
any ever future talks between the Kashmiris for any settlement, because the youth will completely lose faith in the instruments of peace
Yep.
and peaceful solutions. They will feel completely backstabbed and ditched.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I'm telling you, I'm just
Yep.
warning
Mhm.
people around the world. Even Lee Rhiannon knows this, that the only nation in the whole world, I think, who honored after 9/11 peaceful means and peaceful resistance and peaceful solutions. I think number one were the Kashmiri people. They still
Yep.
own it. Right.
Yep.
At that time, when Yasin renounced the armed struggle in
Yep.
1994, according to
Yep.
his will, there were 20,000 people in the armed struggle. Imagine 20,000 people. If he had not given it up, we would have lakhs and lakhs of people in the armed struggle with a full fledged army by now. But he
Yep.
gave that up. He gave that option up. He said, okay, I'll follow that peaceful path of of Gandhi.
Can't.
And
Yep.
now
Yep.
we just have 50 or 60 people, probably, maybe. Not even
Yep.
that much.
Yep.
Main credit goes to the peaceful leaders over there. You have
That's
Sarah
right.
sitting here, her father's locked up in jail for decades. You have Asian Dabi Saiba, all these new
Mhm.
leadership who are left right now, who are alive. I mean, they
Yep.
they they are symbol of the non-violent struggle. If they're eliminated, I'm
Yep.
just not warning the world. This is a fact, because the
Fact.
messages
Yep.
that I get also from the
Yep.
public at large is because they don't have any weapons.
Yep.
They don't know, they don't have any political freedom. They will become suicide bombers. That is
Yep.
what they will become. And then there's no return, because it's not like a remote control that, after every 10 years, a new leader is born. No, these things happen. It's like, Kashmir's been very lucky. to
Yep.
have such revolutionary leaders, but it's not like under remote control that after every like 5 to 10 years, and they do not allow even any new leadership to grow there.
To
So it's
raise.
it's a
Yeah.
very dangerous situation, and if that
Yeah.
happens, then I think it's impossible for any
Yep.
kind of peace, not just in Kashmir, but the entire region is going to erupt
Yep.
like a lava, and
That's it. Yep.
uh,
Yep.
that's what I'm seeing, a very dark future.
Dark future. Yeah, no, we agree with you, and I agree with you. Like the leaders like that don't really born every day, and we are with you. We know that Mr. Yasin Malik going through a lot. Why do you think the Modi their government doing this stuff freely? Like no one's there to stop them or question them at all.
I, I don't know why. I mean, like nobody's really actually taking any actions. I meet a lot of people. I interact with a lot of UN people. They're really deeply concerned. I correspond with human rights organizations. They speak up, but they say that Modi is not ready to talk. That's like completely full stop. This period. There's no talk on Kashmir about the freedom struggle. He doesn't think that that is supposed to be mentioned. And the only way that he's using is crushing them through various detention laws, which have been invalid since partition. If you look at it legally speaking, the British rule that we had over here in the subcontinent, they have made these laws invalid
Hmm.
after 1947. And even in the Indian constitution, all these draconian laws like Armed Forces Special Powers Act, Public Safety Act, and many others, which
Hmm.
are still actively being implemented on Kashmiri people and
Hmm.
on my husband's sedation laws, which are part of the Indian Penal Code, which the Indian Supreme Court has also nullified. All these laws are somehow, obviously illegally, they are being applied on Kashmiri people. And
Hmm. Hmm.
there's no legal ground to it. If you look at the Indian Constitution 1950, through that also it's invalid, and also through the 1978 for Constitution of India 44th Amendment. And apart from that, because they are not a part of India, it's still dispute. UN resolutions have to be
Hmm.
exercised over here. People have to be given that right to freedom. Yet they are being charged under the Indian Penal Code,
Hmm.
Indian penal laws. Whereas if you look at the case of Yasin or the
Hmm.
others, I mean,
Yep.
they're not Indians, yet they're being
Yep.
punished, yet they're being, brutally being tarnished, and it's a violation of Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a blatant violation of Geneva Conventions on the rights of prisoners, and these are all political prisoners.
Political
And
prisoners. Yep.
this is the last resort of
Yep.
protest that my husband has, which is to torture himself. And
Yep.
I sent a message through my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, that this is, please, just wait. Just don't take such an extreme measure. But then, if you read that letter, the way that he has struggled so hard, tirelessly, day and night, and then he formed the Joint Resistance Leadership along with the other Hurriyat leaders, the senior leader, Saeed Ali Gilani Sahab, who's no more
Yep.
amongst us. Even his grave is a sub jail. I mean, nobody
Yep.
can go there to
No,
pray for him.
to pray
And
for.
then Ashraf Sarai Saab was poisoned in jail.
Uh,
All the living
okay.
leadership, it's really a miracle that they're still alive. But if they're eliminated, if that chair is empty, then who will fill that vacuum? The
Yep.
Kashmiri leadership, who is the voice of that majority of that, the 99.9 percent people. I mean, if they're eliminated, then how do we go forward? I don't get it.
Yep.
This is
Yep.
it's almost impossible to understand
Definitely. Yeah. Yep.
the mind of Mr. Modi.
Yep. No. No. Thank you. Thank you for the explanation. Definitely makes sense why these things happening over there. But we'll definitely come back to you in a minute. We'll move on to our next guest, Sahar. Sahar, tell us about your father's journey and your pain, and what is the condition there for him right now?
So, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So, as you all know, my father is a staunch, strong, and a towering political voice of the people of Kashmir. And having spent nearly about 36 years of his life in jails just for a peaceful political cause, currently he's lodged at Tihar Jail, New Delhi since 2017 on a crime which, in his 50 years of political career, he has never been subscribed to. Now, as the fair trial and justice eludes him, We find a ray of hope in the world communities and their justice delivery system. You must be knowing the frivolous charges framed against him under IPC
Yeah.
120B, 121A. It's all about there is no, it is either life imprisonment or death penalty. So, one more important thing that I guess everyone must know that in the
Mhm.
25,000 pages
Yeah.
of the charge sheet, my
Mhm.
father Shabir figures nowhere. In the first supplementary charge sheet, again my father Shabir Shah figures nowhere. In
Oh, yeah.
second supplementary charge sheet, my father Shabir Shah has mentioned two lines that he has given some money to victims and stone pelters. That too at the time when he was already imprisoned in Rajbagh jail. So there has been no proper trial, and this is a criminal silence, and it is unbearable. And we are not frightened or terrified by the illegal and illogical imprisonment of my father, but certainly we are concerned about his health. It has
Yep.
been almost
Definitely.
3 years since I am speaking on the public platforms about my
Yep.
father,
Mhm.
about his
Yep.
health, because this is the criminal silence again, and international convention should intervene for a man who has always helped others, whether it be the Hindus of Amarnath, especially the recent topic that was raised, the Kashmiri Pandits. He was the first person, as soon as he was released, he went to the Kashmiri Pandit camps. He asked them to return to their homes
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
he said
Yep.
that they have right to speak and live in Kashmir. My father always spoke about dialogue, and he said that Kashmir is a political issue and its solution will be politically, has
Yep.
to be done politically. So he has been there, and not only that, the Gujarat earthquake,
Yep. Yep.
where our
Yep.
prime minister is from Gujarat. So he was the first person. He was there before the prime minister Vajpayee, when
Got
with
there. Yeah.
Jagdish Ishwar Bhai Patel,
Yep.
who helped everyone that time
Yep.
in the
Yep.
Gujarat earthquake. So it's just I don't know it, because it's not, my father is not only limited to Kashmir. He was
Yes.
always speaking about the humanity for the
Yep.
peace of people.
Yep. Definitely, like you can, if you look at his career and his struggle, it's not just around the Kashmiris, but a lot more everywhere for humanity. So definitely, very very good point. Thank you, Sahar. We'll come back to you in a minute. We'll move forward to Lee. Lee, Kashmir. The topic of Kashmir is very close to your heart. So would like to take this opportunity to just share your views, your thoughts on current situation and international view on that, please.
Yes, look, thank you very much for the invitation to join you. And we've just heard the two stories from Mashal and Sahar about the family loved ones who have just been in jail for decades and decades. And I did particularly want to say hello to Mashal. I haven't seen her for 4 years. When I had one opportunity to go to Azad, Kashmir, and she was one of the first people I met on my way there,
Yeah.
and great hospitality, and I learned a lot. So it's good to see her again, but really disturbing to hear what her and her family are going through yet again, and particularly now after this shocking court case. And I think what we've got to take these discussions is, when we hear these two cases, is remind ourselves that there are thousands of political prisoners held
Yep.
because of the Indian occupation of Kashmir, where particularly a lot of young men, as well as older men in the main, but women also, held in
Yep.
prisons because of the shocking policies of the Modi government. And I think we do, in these discussions, need to identify the serious problem under the BJP forces, because in India now there is a corrupt judicial system. There's a corrupt electoral
Yep.
system as well. On the world stage, I'm coming to you from Australia, India is called a democracy, but that really has broken down to enormous extent. And we do face a really big problem, because where world leaders are very quick to condemn, as they should, Russia because of the attack on Ukraine, that war there is deeply shocking. They are ready to attack China because of what's happening with the Uyghurs and other human rights issues. But when it comes to human rights issues in India, many world leaders, and Australia's successive prime ministers are an example of this. They don't speak
Yep.
out. like, I'll just give you the example with China, because it's a sort of thing where a government like Australia could play a part in speaking up for the people of Kashmir. When it comes to China, our government actually has an arrangement with China that they will regularly talk about human rights issues, whether it's on trade or whatever the diplomatic issues that are being handled.
Yep.
Human rights come into it. When it comes to meetings with Mr. Modi, you know, those issues like Kashmir and the shocking attacks on Muslims these days, how the citizenships laws are being misused, it's just a no-go area. And I think it really does bring it back to the need for more action in support of the people of Kashmir, and particularly this political prisoners question, because we know that in a few days' time, it'll be the 5th of August, the 3rd anniversary of just about the total takeover by India, removing all autonomy that Kashmir had. And there is global concern. I can see in the time that I've been working on this issue, I wish there was more action, but there certainly is growing global action. I just wanted to mention one of them. I work at a fairly loose grouping called Let Kashmir Decide. And once a month, there's a very energetic woman, Claire Bidwell in Scotland. She and her colleagues organise solidarity with the emphasis on the T. Now, you can look this, find it on social media if you go to hashtag Let Kashmir Decide. And so once a month, people come together, they have a cup of tea, they talk about issues. And this month, the discussion is around political prisoners. They hashtag let free Yassin Malik, free all political prisoners. That's one way we can really develop an understanding about the shocking things that are happening. I believe, though, the movement needs to grow much bigger. There needs to be more action on the streets, more conversations in our parliament, but public action is absolutely critical. And that's where, you know, the pressure needs to be on the Modi government. And our leaders, like where I am, need to be willing to talk to the Pakistan government, because there's a role here for Pakistan resolving this. But at the moment, I think tonight what unites us is our call is to free all political prisoners and to free Yassin Malik and to free the father of Shahar. Like decades in prison where no crime has been committed. That's a crime in itself.
Definitely, very, very valid point. And I agree with you. The awareness is very important, and public awareness is more important than others, because people have to come out and really come on streets. And to your point, I actually note down for myself to go and have a look at hashtag Let's Kashmir Decide. So I'll have a look into it as well. Thanks, Lee. So coming back to Michelle, to yourself, what's Kashmiri wish now? Like, what do they want next? Like in terms of Mr. Yassin going through a lot at the moment, is he getting support from the local people there?
Of course, they have support from the local public. That's why they're locked up in these death cells. That's why draconian laws have been slapped against them, against not just my husband, the other leadership as well, but he's being kept in a death cell and he's on a hunger strike unto death. And he was recently on 25th of May, he was given 2 life imprisonments, and he was given 10 years of rigorous imprisonment and monetary charges and all, in fabricated cases of calling one of the icons of peaceful resistance a terrorist by the National Investigation Agency. And they put my name into it as well, but not in the main case, but obviously as his wife, because we're advocating for the rights of Kashmiri people. So any person who speaks up for Kashmiris, according to the Indian mindset right now, the current state is that they're terrorists. And it's really, making a mockery of the entire meaning of terrorism. They are committing the highest terrorism in this occupational state, with the highest occupational forces there, using all forms of sophisticated weapons, pellets, and power shells and shooter guns and chemical weapons and God knows what on defenseless people who are asking for a fundamental right, which every human being has a right to, a universal human right, universal charter according to the Universal Human Rights Charter, that every human being has a right to honor, dignity, and freedom. That's the
freedom.
first line to it. And the problem here is that, uh, not just for my husband, but for the entire
Mhm.
movement, that India is trying to tame the demography over there. So for that reason, the biggest obstacle was the leadership. And in a disputed territory, they have, in my information, they've granted around 60 lakh Indians domiciles, and giving them the ownership rights and property rights and voter rights of a disputed territory. When you go to Azad Kashmir, you could have some development issues or some unemployment issues or economic issues, but no Pakistani is allowed to buy land there, nor does
Wow.
any Pakistani have a voter right, nor do they have, nor do you see black laws being practiced there. So
Wow.
there's a strong contrast between the two. Because they both fall under the UN umbrella. Their future lies in the UN resolution. So the only way forward, in my opinion, in my simple opinion, is that this area should be demilitarized, and peacekeeping forces should come here, and people should be given
Yeah,
their right, because we've
that's right.
given 50 years. We have
Yes.
given the Kashmiri people, especially the leadership, to peaceful dialogues since Shimla, and I think. Each time something has happened, some false flag operation or some blame game from the
Yep.
Indian side, to just halt the entire peace processes,
Yep.
and blaming Pakistan and ending it on one excuse or the other, because obviously they're the occupiers, and they need to grow their time and their duration of occupation. So for that, they back out each time. So I think the only way forward is giving them that
Mhm.
right, the final
Yep.
right that they've sacrificed for. I mean, we've seen a lot of dialogues between India
Yep.
and Pakistan, Tashkent, Shimla, Agra summit, and Lahore Accord, and 4 points in General Musharraf.
Yep.
But somehow, I mean, even with good intentions from the Kashmiris, I've
Yep.
honored them and the principles of sitting on the table, yet
Yep.
nothing came out. So how to
Mm.
go ahead? So I think if we want to, stop the biggest genocide of this century, which is taking place in
Yep.
this area, in
Mhm.
this region, I think India needs to be charged for it, needs to be
That's
held
right.
accountable for all the
That's right.
work that they've done. If you're talking about Ukraine, if you're talking about international criminal tribunals, which were formed by Professor Stanton, who
Yep.
is the pioneer of the 10 stages of genocide, and he's already
Yep.
mentioned that Kashmir is on the 10th stage right now.
Yep.
During his time in the UN, he formed international tribunals
Yep.
on war crimes for Yugoslavia.
Yep.
We demand that it's high time that Kashmiris should be given
The same opportunity. Yeah.
right to
Yeah.
protection, which they
Right.
don't have. And if Sarah's asking for her father's health. Every leadership is asking for, the safety, and not just for the leadership, for the common public, the youngsters. Their underground
Yep.
thought just works in Kashmir. But how to go about it?
That's it.
We're
Yeah.
not
Very good.
getting any basic fundamental rights. India is a
Yep.
signatory to so many
Yep.
Geneva Conventions on the rights of political prisoners, but
Yep.
solitary confinement in itself is torture, and Yasin has
Yep.
been tortured many times. He has a
Yep.
metallic heart valve.
Yep.
He had blood food poisoning in the early
Oh.
90s.
Wow.
Then he has metallic heart valve. Today I'm actually a little, confused, not confused, or tense, because he's right now in the hospital, and the information I'm getting is at the jail hospital that he's not on those, those drips. So it's coming in
Oh,
the
that's
Indian
not good.
media, but it's not.
Mm.
And so it's a very it's a very disturbing situation for us
Disturbing
to look at,
situation. Yeah, we
because
definitely acknowledge and
that would
understand.
be a blow for the resistance movement if he's wiped out like this, because
Yep.
he was forced to go and take the 6-3 measure, because he was not being given. And the shocking part, because Lee is here, she's a good friend of mine, and she's been following the Kashmir issue very closely, and she's a great human being. Razia
Yep.
Sultana is still waiting for those kangaroos from Lee that you promised. You could have kangaroo. He says, when is Miss
Yeah.
T going to get them for me? And I was like, she's coming soon and don't worry about it. I was just on a lighter note. But, the case that he was going through, the recent one, the NIA one, I mean, you'll be amazed, you'll be shocked that I don't see any example in history where
History.
there's
Yeah.
a person who's being charged. I mean, okay, fine, the state wants to punish you, or they want to kill you, or they want to hang you,
And
or whatever, but at least, the cosmetic requirements are fulfilled, or the recipe to it, that, you're brought to the court for physical
yep.
examination, physical debate,
Yep.
and cross examination.
Yep.
You're produced physically, you're given that right to defend yourself. And if you don't
Correct.
have a
Yeah.
lawyer, when your lawyer is mysteriously gets brain hemorrhage, which is not shocking for most of the Kashmiris, when their lawyers who happen to be Kashmiris,
Yep.
they're harassed or they're eliminated. There are many examples of that. Well,
Yep.
Yasin decided to advocate those fake cases against him himself. He
Yep.
demanded that. And he was not given that permission. He was presented the way we are presented
Yeah.
online right now. Like, you're taking my interview,
Yep.
Fahad. And
Yes.
if
Yep.
I'm talking and if you put it on mute, then what's the
Yep.
point?
That's
And
right.
if
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
talking and if you put it on mute, I can't hear her or I can't
Yep.
hear Lee. So
Yep.
that's the kind of online, the way he has been being presented online.
Presented. Yeah. That's
And
right.
then
Yeah.
one-sided a trial or one-sided proceedings and one-sided the approach. And then the Indian government state had the audacity to their judge to
Yep.
say that we're going to have a state lawyer for you. I mean, like, the state wants to punish him. It's a case from the state or the NIA. The
Yep.
judges are also following the state. The proof is that the Kashmir files, they were
Yep.
launched as a propaganda, hyper
Yep.
propagandistic nature of their media. Through
Yep.
that, this movie was launched there,
Mhm.
and it showed the Kashmiri Pandits' exodus and blamed it on the Kashmiri leadership. And one of
Mm.
the main villains that you see in it,
Yep.
he has a strange, resemblance to my husband Yasin Malik, and blaming
Mm.
them for it, and calling them the butcher of
Yep.
Kashmiri Pandits, and
Yep.
trolling them on
Yep.
social media and on their mainstream media, their print media, digital media, and
Yep.
calling Yasin, that he is
Yep.
responsible for
The-
butchering or for killing or for kicking out the Kashmiri Pandits through
Yep.
their paid media in itself, and then announcing that Yasin will be given life imprisonment and capital punishment for all
Yep.
this that he's done. When that man is locked up in a death cell with no window,
Yep.
even. I mean, the
Yeah.
door opens for some time and then it closes.
Yep.
I mean, that's the kind of media trial that happened even in the case of Afzal Guru Shaheed.
Yep.
And then he
Yep.
was hanged when the media trial happened. So this is a proof that
Yep.
in this decision as well, it was. It was dictated by the state because the judgment was already made public.
Made.
These
Yep.
things are very discreet, and in such
Yep.
sensitive matters, such
That's right.
sensitive issues, it's not an individual; it's an entire movement that they're talking about.
Yep.
And whatever happened with Yasin it's so shocking that they could not even, the basic fundamentals of legal proceedings were
Legal
not.
proceeding. Yeah. Which is
And
quite shocking. Yeah.
the judge, when he announced that,
Yep.
I'm announcing, the punishment against you. That was the only time when he was produced physically in the
Yep.
courts, and
Yep.
he just said, "No, I'm not going to beg for my life.
That's
Whatever you
right.
want to give, whatever punishment you want to
Yep.
announce, I'm ready to accept it."
Yeah. So not given any opportunity to come and talk about himself. So definitely. Thank you for sharing that. Sahar, is there anything you want, your father's message you want to give it to everyone?
Yeah, definitely. We barely get chance. I barely get chance to see my father or talk to him. I have not seen him since years now. But his resolve is very strong as it was back then. And the only message is there that don't lose hope. See, however we Kashmiris are being projected like everything is normal here. Miss Mashal also was
Yeah.
showing that they are showing that everything is normal here. Nothing is happening. Normal life is going on. It is just a mask. It's completely a lie. Many people are not able to speak. See, it was very difficult for me right now to speak on this program because right now I'm in Indian occupied Kashmir, and you never know, they can do something to humiliate you. They even
Yeah.
they have even placed an FIR, filed an FIR for against my mother. So it is nothing but humiliation. So my father he's just saying one thing, that don't lose hope. We are
Yep.
on the right path. It is even our religion says so. So they are very their stand is very clear, and they won't break that. And they are very hopeful that one day we will be free, inshallah. So
Inshallah. Inshallah.
there is just this harassment, nothing else. But
Nothing
obviously, they
else.
will
Yeah.
never give up. Definitely,
Yep.
they will never give up.
Yep.
There
Yep.
have been, my father was offered many luxuries, that we'll give you this, we'll give you that. Just say yes, or say
Trying to
just
bribe that way. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. But he
Yep.
didn't do that.
Yeah. No,
His
very
health,
wonderful
yeah,
message. Yeah.
yeah, his
Wonderful
health
message into.
very badly, very badly. He has been advised operations, some serious surgeries, but they're just putting the blind eye and deaf ears, I must say, to all
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
About the current situation in Kashmir, again, I'm saying that it must you must see that everything is normal here, but it
Yeah.
is nothing. Our voices are being suppressed. As my father had said back then in 90s, that the India can suppress us by forces, but it cannot wipe away the urge of freedom from our hearts. So it's
Yeah.
true.
True. Definitely, I think they're just staging, they're showing the world what they want to show rather than the reality, what's actually happening there. So, very good message in terms of hope. We should not lose. On the last point, Lee, do you want to ask anything to brave ladies we have over here? Do you have any questions for them, Lee?
First off, I'd really like to say thank you for sharing your stories. It's a real reminder, particularly Sahar's final words there, like what her father has conveyed to us is so powerful. And then to hear that Yasin is in hospital, it really is a reminder of the huge crimes that the Modi government is committing, and that the world needs to hold the Indian government responsible. And what I'd just like to ask the two other guests is, what is the message that you would like somebody like myself to take to our communities, to our governments? Because I think history demonstrates that when we have shocking situations like what these are occurring in India now, when people are jailed for so long, so many people are being killed, self-determination has been denied to Kashmiris for decades, that we do need international support in many forms. What is the message that you want us to take to our own communities and to our own governments? And I really did want to say I found your stories very moving, and yeah, again, very powerful, and it does strengthen myself. Although it makes me very sad, it does give me strength to hear you. But I just would like to ask, what's your message that people like myself should take to our communities and our government?
Good question, Lee. Thank you. So, Michelle, Sahar, if you want to give any message, as Lee is asking, for international community, we can take to their community and their politicians.
Yeah, may I?
Yes, please.
Yeah, just you can imagine, like 36 years without any trial. I guess he was first, when he had completed 30 years in imprisonment, he was known as the Nelson Mandela of Kashmir. But now he has broken the record. It has been 36 years now. And I think the world communities are our only hope right now, because the judiciary, we have lost, honestly, all our hope on the judiciary. Recently, we met a lawyer and they charge no more less than 7 crores for the case, with no guarantee of getting released. No bail guarantee, but they are charging 7 crores. So it is not a small thing. 7 crores is a quite big amount. So I want the world communities to act upon this. And I, as a daughter, really want, if you cannot get them released, at least their health is very important to us. They are on their stand, but their health matters the most. At least they must be treated as a political prisoners. They are not criminals. There is no crime. They have not done any crime. And I, as a daughter, have been appealing the world communities to come up and speak for them, for a person who has always chosen a path of peace, yeah, not only here but across the country. And had he been given the passport, he would take this issue internationally. The
Yeah.
president, senior George Bush has met my father. long back. My senior judge which met my father, they discussed the Kashmir issue, but we really want the world communities to at least act upon this thing. And it is an appeal as a daughter to the world communities. Please don't stay silent. Speak up before it's too late.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Michelle, would you like to pass your message, please?
Messages that I think we will see Kashmiri products in museums now very soon. We'll see their handicrafts, their shawls, or their furniture somewhere lying somewhere in the world being auctioned, their carpets. But I think Kashmiris will definitely, the way it's going, they'll become extinct. And the entire race is being eliminated. And it's really shocking that in such modern times, in the 21st century, we talk about humanity, equality, globalization, and we see such a stark contrast with what's happening. It's worse than the Stone Age, the kind of treatment that's being meted against the Kashmiri people. And um, hats off to the entire movement that it's still continuing. And I think it's very important that for the world to just, because we've seen karma happening in the world. When 5th of August happened in 2019, Kashmiris were totally, in a lockdown, in a siege, and a curfew altogether, and there were no food supplies, medicines, no schools, and it's just complete, in a cage. And when India decided to abrogate Article 370 and 35A through a presidential order at that time, we saw a bit of condemnation. We saw protests globally, and we saw activists coming out, but not to that extent that it could put some pressure on India. But yes, the tempo was increasing. International media was covering it. But then what we saw in 2020, in March, that the whole world was in a lockdown. So this is very symbolic message coming from the divine power, from God Almighty, that if these people are so helpless right now, and they have nobody, nowhere to go, and they're just confined to their homes, and they're being kicked out of their homes as well, and they're bulldozing their townships and colonies, and building apartments and sunny colonies for the Indians, and
Hmm.
all their economic, political rights, their educational rights are being crushed, and industrial zones are being constructed for the Indians, and they have nowhere to go, and they're starving to death, and the leadership is being eliminated, and there's so much of force outside. So I think it was a strong message coming from God Almighty that
Yep.
they're also part of this world. So just
Oh,
acknowledge them as human beings. So
beings. Yep.
no matter if you're Australian, British, American, Pakistani,
Yep.
American, or from any country, from Russians or Chinese, but at the end of the day, there's one thing that connects all of us is humanity and
Humanity.
human
Yep.
beings. And I think we should be, because if we're God-fearing human beings, so we should fear the wrath of God, and we should do as
Definitely.
much as we can in developed countries, in the developed world, in the first world, in any sovereign country where we are staying or we're living or residing, that we have to speak up for the Kashmiris. Whatever they want freedom. That right should be given to them, which was promised in the UN, and they should all be released, the political prisoners. And especially in the case of Sarah's father, of Asian Rabi Saiba, and of other political prisoners. I mean, it's heartbreaking. The journey, not just for the leaders, but for the families,
For the
the toll.
families.
I know her mother as well. When I got married, I met her at a wedding, and she just screamed. She's like, "Oh, how did you get married to Yasin?" I remember, we had very beautiful moments. I have
Yeah.
spent with such loving people there, and yeah, it's a relationship of love with
Yep.
Kashmir, with the Kashmiri people, and I think anybody can fall in love with Kashmiris.
Yep.
Just such loving, hospitable people, and they've never attacked any Indian tourist nor any Kashmiri pandits' home. They're still protected their homes of Kashmiri pandits. They can come there, and it was BJP's governor Jagmohan who was responsible for the
Hmm.
exodus of the Kashmiri pandits, not the Kashmiris
Yep.
themselves. And I remember I mean, the kind of negative propaganda that's taking place in this movie. One of my wedding receptions was done by the Kashmiri Pandits in Jammu. It's
Wow.
nothing like that they show. It's just like a few
Yeah.
handpicked people that
Hmm.
they do their false propaganda,
Yeah.
and just want that, Lee, just start a campaign amongst your public. You're already doing so much for us, and I'm really grateful to you. You're a great human being, and I cherish all the moments I spent with you when you came to Pakistan and you came over to our house. And since then, I've seen that, the way you are very vocal, and I'm so proud of your voice as a strong voice. You're I think more Kashmiri now than Australian. So I just want you to just, gear it up and just keep on advocating at least the basic rights of the Kashmiri political prisoners.
Mm.
They must be with the medical care. I mean, at
Yeah.
least we want them alive. We
Life.
don't
Yep.
want them.
Yep.
We don't
Yep.
want more graves. We don't
No.
want
Yep.
more
No.
martyrs. We want Kashmiris to live. I want Yasin to live. I want Shibi Shah Saab to live. I want
Live. Yep.
us. I want them to live. They have
Yep.
every right to live, and
Yep.
they should be honored. They should be
Yep.
respected. Human life. So for that, we
Yep.
should campaign. Thank you, Fahad.
Yep. Thank you, Michelle. That very, very important point is humanity. Humanity comes first. So thank you for that. And I'm sure Lee will definitely take this message and share with the community and the political leaders in Australia. So on that note, I would really like to thank you all these three lovely strong ladies. We really appreciate your time, Sahar Shah, Michelle Malik, and Lee Rhiannon. Thank you so much. We want freedom for Kashmir, and we are with you at every level, no matter where we live in the country or the world. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.